We're going to come back to some transfer rumors soon, but obviously, boys, I haven't seen you both all week, and a lot of stuff has happened this week with City. They're suing the Premier League. There are a number of clubs backing them. Funnily enough, all the clubs that are facing financial difficulties or that want to do associated inflated sponsorship deals are kind of standing by them, but the majority still behind the Premier League. What's been your take on all this, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, the clubs that are back in Man City is not a surprise, because they have a vested interest in that situation overcoming. Like, I honestly, Man City's movements is so hard to tell. Obviously, people have said, "Oh, it's just a strategy because they know they're guilty." It's a mad situation, but yeah, I feel like clubs like Villa and Newcastle, they're dying to spend. Man City have come out and basically kind of said, yeah, like we should have been able to spend. We should be able to inject this money, and it's not fair. So I don't understand how what grounds they have to sue in terms of like the Premier League have been found guilty for not letting clubs spend and having restrictive rules. They must pay out, or force them to change the rules or what. But yeah, it's been obviously my club. We ain't in any PSR situation, so we haven't really, from what I know, backed it. But yeah, Aston Villa, Newcastle. I'm kind of with, obviously, I've with City. I'm thinking that there needs to be less restriction, but in a more fair way, which we'll talk about in a bit. Do you know what I mean? Because you spoke before, Terry, and we're going to get into it about previous things that have happened with clubs, but we need to restructure rather than just this model, it don't work for me. So if Man City can shed some light and get some change for it, then I think that's a positive.
What did you make of it, Staffy? Do you think this is, some people are saying it's an admission of guilt, others have more of a view like Dan, which is very fair, that this is about allowing clubs to invest a little bit more money, maybe lose a little bit more money, but spend more in the pursuit of growth? How do you view this court case that starts Monday?
It's a bit of a weird one, because I was listening to people talk about it all week, and as you said, we haven't spoken since this all happened, and there's a lot of good points that are being made. People will say it's probably them admitting guilt. I kind of see where that's coming from. There was a graphic that came out the other day, a chart, sorry, I should say, and it was showing the percentage of growth of Premier League clubs commercially, I think something like that, in the last decade, I believe, and everyone averaged about a 250% growth between everyone else but City, and then you had City on like 1,000 something, 1,170, and I'm like, you're like 4 times more than the closest club to you, which was United at 300%. And to me, that just looked crazy. How did you have that much growth in the past 10 years? And then you're actually upset and saying you want to change the rule. And there's something about them being what last year they were only 5% behind Real Madrid in terms of
their turnover is now only £5 million a year behind Real Madrid.
5 million, sorry, not 5%. So I'm looking at all this, I'm like, you should probably be the last club to complain, because you've had the best growth, Sprout, in the last decade, and you're trying to change the rules. I can't look at it and be like, objectively, they need to change the rules because they feel like the rules are restricting them from being a global club and being commercially more strong and all that stuff, because they've definitely had enough growth.
Let me ask you this question, Staffy. Their claim is, Staffy, let me ask you as a question. Their claim is that these rules are stopping them from being the richest club in the world and and one of the best teams in the world. Have these restrictions stopped City from becoming one of the wealthiest teams in the world and becoming the best team in the world?
No way, because if you check this rate, if they go by this rate, give it another decade, they'll be miles ahead of everyone. You don't even have to wait for a decade. By the rates that they've been showing their growth for the past 10 years, if they continue this for another 3 to 5 years, they will indefinitely be the best club in the richest club in the world. So there's no way you looked at your trajectory and they said, you know what, we need to change the rules because by this trajectory, we'll never be the richest club in the world. That makes 0 sense. There's no fucking way. I'm looking at it, and it has to do something to do with their charges. I will be very honest with you, because I've been someone who spoke. I think I spoke the least about their charges. I didn't want to talk about it a lot. I thought it was jarring. I thought it was annoying. I was like, just let it be until they find them guilty or not. But when I'm really looking at it, They tried to put. I feel like this is basically what I'm gonna try to wrap up this with. They're trying to do this underdog persona that they are, and that people are trying to fight them. Where really, you've been actually abusing the rules the most, and it just shows because the numbers don't lie. At the end of the day, when you look at your numbers, as I said, your trajectory shows that indefinitely you will be the richest club in the world. It's just no coincidence for me that you're suing the Premier League now to change these rules that go hand in hand with your issue with the 115 charges when it comes to the sponsorship deals. That is the one thing that I'm looking at. I'm like, there's a correlation there, and that's why you put that. But that's just my opinion on it. It's all conspiracy, but it's my opinion.
I don't even think it's conspiracy. I asked, someone said to me that you tried to catch Staffy out. No, I didn't. I was asking almost a rhetorical question, really. But if these rules, so the ones in the last 3 years and all the rules that have been in the past, if they haven't been breaking them, or they don't want to break them, even if they're stating that our associated party transactions will be legitimate and within market value, if all of that is true and you've grown by 1,100% in the last decade or so, I don't understand the complaint, because you've become the second richest team in the world, short by 5 million. They're probably going to surpass Real Madrid in the next 12 months. So you've become the richest team, the most successful in England in that time, and one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. So therefore, when I see the other clubs, the Villas and, you know, I think Everton fans we're just trying to catch up. But City have done it without cheating, right? So this idea these rules stop you from getting to the top is completely undone by the fact that City haven't cheated and they've got to the top within this rule structure. So that's the confusion for me. It's either City have cheated to get there, or you're all chatting shit that you can't make it to the top. It might take you a decade, but so what if it takes a decade? Some of our clubs that turn over what we turn over, it took 130 years to get to this point. A decade's nothing in comparison. So that's the element why I'm so excited about this court case, because I want to see it all come out. There's also the claims against they don't like the democratic process. That's the bit that's wound me up the most, actually. It was only yesterday the same clubs, the Evertons and the Forests and the Cities, who said basically the way the democratic 2/3 process works is a disgrace. That's what the claim says in court. Did the same thing to Wolves to keep VAR. They did it to Wolves. They all, by the way, and some of the cartel clubs, along with Man City and Chelsea, voted that it is okay for clubs to sell their assets to their sister companies. So again, it's like, oh, there's a red cartel and we don't stand with them until we agree on a rule, then we all vote together. That's my issue with a lot of, there's so much, and this isn't just a City issue. This is all the clubs involved. There's an hypocrisy within this of, I don't like the voting system. Until the voting system works for you, then people like it. But the biggest problem I have with this, and again, every time I now see the clubs vote in favor of something, I'm just going to tweet tyranny of the majority. And if City that have said that in court, that they feel like they're suffering under tyranny because of the voting system, they should now abstain from any vote, surely, right? But the bit that I'm worried about the most is if they win. It's not City winning. So City fans think, you just want to destroy City. I actually don't want to see any club destroyed. And I want to bring something up that's really important, I believe. I saw this tweet from a Newcastle fan. And this Newcastle fan said here, I'm just timestamping this so we don't lose it in the stream, but he says, Newcastle have the wealthiest owners in the world in football. They do. Owners dying to plow in hundreds of millions, probably billions if we're being honest. Owners who have more money than every other Premier League club combined. But we have to sell a player for 20 million because if we don't, we're at risk of being financially unstable. I think he then goes on to say this is a joke. There's been City fans that have put out saying that City are fighting for the greater good. Newcastle qualified for the Champions League but couldn't invest and are now being forced to sell. Villa qualified for the Champions League. They may have to sell. And then Chelsea, Everton, Leicester, Forest all under pressure to sell this month. Chelsea actually are not. That was a misthing from Sky. And I understand this claim. But then it made me go back because I'm so annoyed at the media for not talking about this. Younger fans are probably not going to remember this because it's all 10, 15 plus years ago. And I don't know how old people were. I don't even think football news from the Premier League was shared around the world like it is now. So you might even be my age, but live in America or Australia and have no idea about this. But we have to be so careful about letting clubs spend whatever they want. And I want to show people a few things here. So back in February 2010, Pompey were the first Premier League club to go bankrupt and to go into administration. And this may shock some people to find this out, but they went into administration with £66 million worth of debt and taxes owed. 66 million, which in 2010, the TV deal money by them, by the way, was a fraction of what it is now. 66 million in 2010 was a lot of money. Wasn't the biggest, but it was a lot of money. Nowadays, it looks like a drop in the ocean. At the time this happened, they had one billionaire owner that came in a year prior, in the season prior, but he was dismissed and removed because he stole money from the fund to buy the club, even though he was a billionaire. A second billionaire came in, promising the world, promising to plow money in and fix the football club, but yet decided in the end, got a bit bored and didn't want to pay the £66 million debt off. They went into administration. They have never recovered from this point. We saw Rangers, who had a debt of around 70 million in totality. Okay, this was a headline when Craig Wright, the Scottish billionaire who took over the club that he loves, billions of pounds in the bank, went out of business and went bankrupt for a 70 million pound debt. You had West Ham, okay, who had to be saved by Gold & Sullivan after two consecutive billionaires run the club into the ground, and for a debt of around 60 million, nearly went out of business. Leyton Orient, a much smaller football club, almost went out of business and out of existence after a billionaire bought them and run up debts only totaling in the millions, and then decided he didn't want to pay it anymore and pulled his money. Now, all of this was happening before, barring Leyton Orient, before FFP and PSR existed. I don't believe the Premier League brought these rules in to scarper a city or a future city. They did it because if you do your history between 2005 and 2012, when they initiated these laws and these rules in the game, multiple situations like this happened in England and abroad, where very wealthy millionaires, multimillionaires or billionaires were buying clubs, and they weren't doing what Roman and the Sheikh have done. They were ruining football clubs. And on debts totaling tens of millions, these clubs, some did, and some nearly went out of business. Now, you fast forward to 2024, the money in the game now, the salaries in the game now, and the amount of money these billionaires are now promising to pump in. How the hell would a club survive a £500 million or £1 billion debt that these super rich owners could potentially generate? And for whatever reason, they get bored, they pass away, their families move on, their country gets sanctioned. If, for instance, those debts are leveled against these clubs, there are no millionaires that can save you. There are very few billionaires that could save you. And this is the one thing I want football fans. This is not about jealousy of City. Man United, with or without these rules, are fine. We have enough money to spend. I don't care that other people have money. I have never bemoaned another club spending money. What I find disgusting from football fans is this approach of pulling up the ladder and saying, I'm okay, Jack. Yes, Newcastle's owners might not do it to them. City's owners may never do it to them. But there might be 5, 6, 7 other clubs who go out of business because their owners are allowed to run up debts and spend money without major checks and balances. And in my opinion, that cannot be allowed. We cannot lose sight of why these rules come in and be fed into conspiracy theory bullshit. Football clubs nearly went out of existence that have been around for 100+ years because ridiculous owners came into football and took over. We have to control, we almost have to protect football clubs and the fans from themselves. Because I remember my brothers as Orient fans, they got this billionaire came in that said Champions League football in 5 years. They're a League One team. They went out and signed championship players. They signed Jay Simpson, who used to be at Arsenal, 25 grand a week. That was almost what their main 11 would pay collectively up until that point. Signing championship players, spending all this money. 18 months later, he said, I don't want to do this anymore. And then he got rid of all those players out on loan, sold all the first team players, and made the manager play the youth team and got them relegated consecutively, and they nearly went out of business. So from my point of view, and yes, I'm rattled about this sort of thing because I care about the pyramid of football in England. I know for some people it's all about the Premier League and your club, but football is an integral part of the culture of my country. the culture of Spain, the culture of Italy, Portugal. And I'm sure it's the same in many other parts of the world. And I think we have to protect it and ensure that it's safeguarded, sometimes from itself. Because sometimes in the pursuit of greatness, we can mess up and we need people to stop us. So I will be honest with you, if City win this court case and these rules go, it's not about City winning and spending more money, because if we're allowed to do associated sponsorship, great. Do you know how much more money Ineos could pump into Man United? They're worth tens of billions of pounds. I'm happy with it. I am concerned about the poor buggers that get, and I won't name the club because everyone will get offended, but a billionaire owner comes in next week, plows in £1 billion, runs up huge debts in wages, and then pulls his money out, and they are fucked. Then there'll be a lot of tears, and what you'll get is, where's the Premier League? Where's the authorities protecting and stopping this? And that's what happened. It's always after the fact that we care. So for me, I'm very passionate about this. If City win, if the club's back in and win, there has to be checks and balances. Sorry to rant, boys, but it frustrates me. We've nearly seen out of business, and people just don't seem to care about it. It's mad to me.